Hello, good morning. This week I will be starting a new series with you um, for people who want to work on the web. Want to work on the web. So if you are here and you want to build websites, you want to build web apps, you want to develop graphics for the web, starting a new series. Actually, it will cover web development ground up. To cover web development ground up, and to also apply design principles, which is very essential uh, for people who work on the web or programmers who work on the web. Um, the first thing I'd like us to step into is to understand the web. Understand the web. Uh, we need to understand the web because along the way, you see, programming is a skill. It can be picked, and you can understand code and know how to implement code. However, there comes a point where a scenario you enter into might be different from what you already know. And that is when your ability to make sound design decisions count. By design decisions, I am seeing that where you have to apply certain design principles that ensure that your users get the best experience in that scenario. So I think that this introduction I wouldn't start straight away talking about code. Start straight away talking about maybe HTML, CSS, JavaScript, or some of the technologies that are implemented well. However, I'd like us to first understand the infrastructure of the web. Okay. Uh, when we understand the infrastructure of the web, now we can design better for the web. So let's look at the web, the internet, and web browsers, how they work. Okay. Um, this kind of forms the architecture on which the pages you develop live. So you have the web, the internet is like the transportation system, like the road networks. Uh, the web is like the city itself, and the web browsers are like the people requesting for stuff. Okay, but we'll look at them still. So when we talk about the web, it's simply a system of the connected resources and documents. Okay, so the documents and resources that leave the infrastructure is what we call the web. And you can access that via the internet. The internet is like the road that links you to those resources, the roads that link. So it mean we need roads, we need transportation system because the users sit somewhere and they request for those documents, they request for those resources. So we need something that connects them, that connects their requests to their destinations. And we say is that through web browsers. Web browsers are like the users, where the user sits and then play. So in short, we'll say that the web is simply an interconnected document resources. These are accessed via the internet and through web browsers. Okay. And the formats of the documents we find on the web sometimes are in the form of HTML, in the form of CSS, in the form of JavaScript, they're in the form of XHTML. Resources, by resources, there are images, there are videos, there are audios, fonts, even fonts. Uh, as we go deeper into web development, you understand how we can create custom fonts for our websites. So those forms have to live on the web and databases. They often appear in the HTML, CSS codes as links. Okay. So these resources appear there. And that's a brief about the web. Okay. They are the system of interconnected documents and resources. Now let's look at the internet. The internet, as I spoke about earlier, is like the root network that links you to the user to the resource. So the resource and the documents live on the web, they live there, but you need a system that connects you to that place. And you use URLs. By URLs, we mean um, uniform resource locators. And these are the examples we type into our browsers, like maybe www.google.com or www.cnn.com or ghanaweb.com. These human-friendly words are what we term as the URL, and it's the address. Okay, so someone says, "What's your website address?" Then you give them a URL, maybe www.letscode.com. So these are human friendly. However, on the internet, remember that even though we as human beings understand or easily remember google.com, switches, routers, proxies, networks don't use that google.com. They use what we term as an IP address, Internet Protocol Address. IP address, the language they speak. Okay. So if I send maybe, or I type www.google.com in my browser, what happens is this google.com needs to be converted in a format that's the switches, the routers, the networks, the proxies that live on the internet, the devices that communicate on the internet, requesting for the resource I'm looking for, speak. And they speak in a protocol we call the Internet Protocol, the IP. However, human beings understand the URLs, which is the Uniform Resource Locators, which is words, human-friendly words. That's what it's easier to remember that way. The IP is made up of numbers with sometimes periods, and it's not easy to remember. However, there is a server called the domain name server, and we'll come to the role which it plays very soon as we go on. And the domain name server, what it does is that it's when I type www.google.com, what happens is that request leaves my browser and goes to the domain name server. And the domain name server checks to match with the corresponding IP. So let's say if the IP is number 35, it checks through its database and then says that, oh, google.com corresponds to number 35. So number 35 is what we are looking for. And it relays that to the switches and to the routers and to the devices on the internet. It speaks that language rather to them. It doesn't speak google.com to them. Okay. So first thing which happens is the conversion of the request from that format, maybe google.com, or for that URL google.com to an IP address that can be understood by the devices that live on the internet or on the root network we are talking about. So over here, over the internet, browsers, routers, and switches and proxies communicate using the IP. The IP also means the internet protocol. Even though it cannot be easily remembered by humans. I said that the IP is a set of numbers that are used by the internet. Okay, so this implies that for every URL or every domain name, the domain name is like google.com, okay, which is requested by a user. Its associated IP needs to be fetched and used over the internet. Okay. Now let's look at what happens when the user requests for a web page. First thing which happens is that the request, maybe google.com, leaves the browser. The browser is sitting somewhere and then doing that. Leave the browser, and the request heads straight to what we call the DNS, or a domain name server, which has the database of the URL we mentioned and the IP addresses, the corresponding IP addresses. And it tries to map out the IP of the requested URL. So if the user requests for maybe Ghana.com, it tries to fetch the IP number or the IP address which corresponds to Ghana.com. Once that is obtained, then the browser will establish a connection to the server using what we call the HTTP or the HTTPS protocol. And this protocol is what the browsers pick or use to receive data. Okay. They open up that portal so that they can receive the data that will be sent to, or the feedback that will be sent from the server. And often we see this. So when let's say, launch my browser and I want to, I can type HTTPS // When I type this, once I type this is the protocol, Hypertext Transfer Protocol. This one, HTTPS, means secured. Now, the secured has a secure layer that is added to HTTP. Okay, so when I type this, it means that the browser should use this protocol and be ready to receive. Sometimes if I don't type and I type google.com straight away, www.google.com. When I don't type this and I type google.com straight away, automatically that will be added. That's why you can see that in my browser, that has been grayed out. That has been grayed out because if I don't type it at all, now automatically that will be added for me. Okay. So that's what the HTTPS is. It's a protocol that opens up and gets the browser ready to receive the content. So the content I requested for was google.com. The content has showed up. Okay. But let's look at what happened before the content showed up. So one of the IP addresses obtained after the search in the DNS, the browser initiates a connection to the server using this protocol, the HTTP or the HTTPS, which means Hypertext Transfer Protocol. Once it does that, then the request is routed over the internet through various networks, hosts, other proxies, until it reaches the destination or the host server. So there is a particular server that is carrying the web page I'm looking for, maybe google.com. So wherever their server is, now the IP address I obtain, maybe if it's number 30, it goes on the internet looking for the home address for 30. So it keeps moving around, searching for where 30 lives. Okay. And when it finds 30, then it places a request that user A is looking for you. Okay. So it will go around looking for that IP address, fetch it, and that is what we call the host server. The host server is the place where the files you design as a web designer will be hosted, and they will be sitting, waiting for the person to, let's say, find you out or to figure you out. So when they go to maybe www.nana.com, which you have designed and placed there, www.nana.com will have an IP address, which the user, when he types nana.com, that IP will be searched for and come to your end. When it comes to your end, then the host server will then process the request and retrieves the requested page that is looking for. So if you're looking for the home page, you retrieve it. If you're looking for maybe the about page, to retrieve it, which is composed of the HTML, the JavaScript, the CSS, which the developer has written, the code that they develop, and sends it back to the browser as a response. So remember, you have an IP sitting on the your browser or your computer has an IP. The other person to or the web host or the server also has an IP. So what happens is once you search, it goes to knock on their door, collect the needed information, and it uses your IP to trace you back. So since your portal has been open to the HTTPS, that will be open to receive the documents. Okay. And let's look at web browsers. It's important for us to understand how the route is because uh, you'll be designing for the internet. And you need to understand that, okay, well, my files have to go through all these channels before it comes back to me. Okay. And let's look at web browsers and say that web browsers, they send HTTP or HTTPS requests in search of a specific web page and listens for a feedback. Okay. So it receives and renders the feedback. And if the page is found, then it will receive the pages like document, HTML code that was found and render it in a friendly format that can be seen as the website. So someone there went to your website and this image was here, that was here. It came to knock on the door of the server or the host and then fetch the documents and came back. That's what actually happened. And if the page is not found, then it will display the browser's 404. 404 is like page not found. Okay. So after going to knock on the IP address number 30, if you realize that, oh, that page is not there, then the IP number 30 will send away that go and tell your user that we can't find that page looking for it. And how the browser tells the user is that it will display its 404 page, that page not found. And even though browsers have the mandates to display web pages, it's important to test the browsers to test your code across several browsers because after you develop the website or you build it in your local host, if you don't test it, you can get surprised because some of them you might be using features that are not implemented in those browsers. And when your code gets there, it will break. It won't show up as it should. So it's important for you to test across several browsers. Very popular browsers are Chrome, Firefox, and maybe Apple Safari, very popular ones. And maybe Opera, but I don't know how popular Opera is. But these are, let's say, the very popular ones that a lot of, and Internet Explorer, of course. Internet Explorer, which comes with Windows, Internet Explorer. So it's important to test your code across several browsers so that you can have browser compatibility. Now, so that brings us to the very important question of the day and why I'm even making this video. So why should a web designer or developer care about the web, the internet, and how browsers work? Let's go and then demo, and I'm trying to understand why we should care about it. Okay. There is a tool I sometimes use here called the inspector. So when I right click on it, I'm using the Firefox. So when I right click on it, it helps me to inspect maybe classes. So let's say if I want to inspect what is going on, I say, okay, inspect this. And it will give me what is going on with this particular code, the CSS that was written for it, the borders that have been set to it. So it's a tool for actually debugging, which is very helpful. So this is actually the CSS, the styles that have been written for it. Um, and there's the HTML code, the class image. Okay. When I go here, it shows me the source of the image. So when I click this, it will take me to the source of the image. Let's try it. Okay. So now this inspector is very useful, especially in the network panel. The network panel kind of tells me, it listens to what is going on in the background and then tells me whenever it's necessary. So if let's observe what happens with the network panel when I hit www.google.com. So www.google.com. Yeah. As my page is loading, you can see there are files that are being fetched. There are files that are being fetched all the time. Okay. That's what actually causes my page to load. So in the background, even though I've seen things going on, my page is still loading. Okay, and depending on how fast my internet is, and depending on the size of data I have to load, it tells me that in all, let's see here, in all the number of requests, I had 53 requests going out. Okay, 53 requests going out. I had 544.38 kilobytes of this data being transferred up and down. Okay. And it finished in 45.33 seconds. The page content load was 2.14 seconds. All this data is giving me some information about when we say request. Okay, so when I request for, I said, oh, I requested for google.com, but it placed 53, 56 requests. Okay, it placed 53 requests. This is because along the way, we can see that there are lots of requests going down here, going on here. And I will explain, even though I'm requesting for one file, there are other files that are associated with, for example, like this image, like the icons we have here. We will have several other, so we have some icons here, we have images. All of these things will also be requested for by the page. So when I place google.com, it comes and then it's also requesting for other things, resources that it needs to work with. So for example, when I come to images, the images tab, now I can see, okay, things that were content that were requested. Okay, let's say there's one image. So here we find one image that was requested. Where do we find it on our page? This side. Okay. There is also another image. So this one was also requested, even though I just said google.com. So we have this one also requested, the sprite. The sprite talks about some icons. So as you can see, look at this, history, a search, and the demographic. Let's go and see if we find it on our page. Sometimes sprites are difficult to find, but we'll still try and then. As long as they are shown here, that means that they were requested. Maybe they'll be in a set of icons somewhere here, or they might be hidden some. And all of these things are also requested, like the Google, the icons we see around. Okay, so when you request for a web page, it doesn't mean only the web page shows up. It means that several other resources have to show up as well, okay, along with it. So that's one way I use the network tab to kind of figure out what is going on in the hood, okay? And this is only the images tab. There are HTML files that were requested as well. There are CSS files that were requested as well. So CSS is the code for styling stuff. Okay, so when I hit the style sheet, And I say, okay, now it opens up the code, the root. We can see that this is showing some code name and this is showing some color information. And we can see margin set to 14 pixel, which is a CSS code. We can see min width set to 288 pixel. So a lot happens in the background. And it's important for you as a developer to understand, or a web designer to understand that all of these files will be built by you, will be supplied by you, and you have to optimize them. They have to come in the best format as possible so that you don't have a situation where your page takes a very long time to load. Okay. And that's why we have to understand some of these things, these principles. So over here I said, why should the designer or the developer care about the web, the internet? Because you have to understand the infrastructure, how things go on there. So that when you are designing, you always have optimization in mind. Optimization means that your file sizes are optimized. They are very small. They are efficient so that when the user requests for them, they get to the user on time or in time, and then the user is able to enjoy the experience. Not that when they request for the page, they'll sit for a long time before they receive the page. And some users, when they sit for a long time and they haven't received the page, then they tend to move to other options or other alternatives. Okay. So it's important to understand this. So I said over here that why we should understand is that we need to deliver superior user experience. Okay. And the first thing is optimizing design. Why do we have to optimize design? Okay. Because when we optimize the design, our resources become efficiently used. Okay. And the user, it also helps the user because if they save the user with data, the amount of data they need to transfer or receive, and also time. Okay. So the first thing is minimizing external links. I told you that even though we place one request, several requests have been placed because of the links and scripts that were involved. Okay. And let's say, go up to an example of a link and a script. Let's say that we want to view this page source. We are viewing the page source. Okay. This has been, we call something minified, so it's not easily readable. Google does that for their own reasons. But when we go into the header, let's find things like the head. Okay, so the head is here. The head, we have a meta in it. We have another meta in it. We have another meta in it. And we have a title in it. We have a nuance in it. And we have a script. All of these things are going to be requested for. Okay. So there's a link, there's a link that will be requested for, and some functions in there. So each request will take some time to load. If you have multiple script files, you can all combine all of them into one script file that is loaded once, so that you don't have to place several multiple request forms. If you can use a DNS, there's something we call a CDN, content delivery network, that allows you to host certain files. Okay, so you can host files that, like maybe they are script files, and you need them on several servers around the world. Why you need them on several servers around the world is that usually, depending on where your user is found, they may be closer to a particular server. So if you have multiple servers around the world, we call it a content delivery network, such that they hold the content, and then when a user needs your content, the nearest server will show up and then deliver that resource to your user. So sometimes you can adopt them. The best thing is to reduce when you are coding or designing, you reduce the number of links you have or the scripts you also have, since it can also help you gain much faster results. And remember that the more you load scripts or links, it means that the more time the user have to wait. Okay. The other thing is optimizing your multimedia or the images, the videos, the things you do. Okay, so if you have maybe videos or some content that are the data files are heavy, what you can do is you can use or adopt video streaming sites like maybe YouTube. We have technologies that help you optimize the videos into various formats so that maybe, let's say, someone is using a mobile phone and is requesting for that video that is in the format of HD and it has a weight of, let's say, 1280 pixels and a height of 800 pixels. That video might be huge and it take a long time to download. But YouTube can optimize it into a format called the SD format, MP4 format, which is very tiny and the user can easily download it. Okay, so you have to watch the format of files you upload. If it's something you feel it's heavy, then you should rely on a video streaming technology to help you bring it down. However, you should also understand the policies of that video streaming technology, what their copyright is. That maybe when you post any content there, it becomes their property or it becomes their rights. They have a right of use or whatever it is. You should understand and know how you can find a good balance between their services and what you want delivered to the user. The other thing is also caching. Caching is the computer's ability to remember the things earlier downloaded. So I'll let's say I'll show an example to you how caching. So let's say earlier you see some files have been graded out. So let's say I come here and then say I want to go to google.com. I want to go to google.com. Now, even though some of them appear to be deeper, others have been grayed out. The grayed out ones means that they are caching. So you can see cached, waiting here, waiting over here, cached. Okay. The grayed out ones means that they are caching. When we say something is in the cache, the browser has the ability to remember things it's earlier downloaded so that it doesn't have to download it again. Okay. And that saves the user, let's say, some data to download. That makes it faster. Okay. So if it downloaded a style sheet, it downloaded a script, this time when I enter google.com again, it won't go and re-download that thing again. Okay. And so, but if there are files that sometimes need to be freshened all the time, so those files are not cached. They are downloaded every time. So you can see some of them are cached, others too were downloaded 84 megabytes, 84 kilobytes, 90 kilobytes. But those ones which were cached, it helps you save on the traffic or it helps you save on the page load times. So you should adopt that when you can. Why we need to go through this is to help us understand the infrastructure of the web or the place where we develop files for. And we should have in mind that, well, being good at programming is one thing, but being able to make design decisions or uh, sound design implementations is also another thing. So you can be good with code, but you can forget to optimize your files, and it takes a very long time to for your users to download certain files. So I think that with this in mind, today we looked at the web and we said that the web is is an infrastructure of like interconnected resources and documents. Okay? And we can access them via the internet. The internet is like the root networks where we have switches, where we have network devices, where we have stuff which routes or kind of carries our requests from the sender to the destination and back. Okay, so that infrastructure or that road that carries it is the internet. And the web browser is the tool we use to place a request for web files and also receive our request and render it into a format that users can look at. The next time we meet, we'll look at the website or your website technologies that are available that you will be leveraging and implementation, how some of them are used. Then we'll also look at your users. It's important to understand your users, their experience, and the level of interactivity they're able to give to some of these things. And so this is just an introductory course for people who want to build things for the web. And by that, I mean developers, I mean web designers, I mean people who want to build apps for the web, I mean people who want to build resources like graphics for the web. They need an understanding of all of these things. So this is actually not a class where or a video where we write code. So today we are not going to write any code. Okay. I wish you all the best in the upcoming series, and I'll see you. And when we get to the point where we have to code, we'll do a lot of coding. But in the meantime, these are principles that we need to understand very well so that when we are designing later, we have them in mind that, okay, well, um, we are designing for some users. And so we have to take a look at that. Okay. I wish you all the best as you go along with me on this journey. And I promise to make it exciting for you. Exciting. I wish you the best.